Yes.
Testing. Yep. Go ahead. Go ahead and check one more time, Drew. Go ahead and test one more time in the mic. Oh, go ahead and test one more time.
Test, test, test.
It might be doing it remotely. Yeah. I know, exactly. He shows up pretty good. I'm impressed. Yeah. It's nice to meet you. Yeah. Good evening. Oh, yes, I do. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. When it's here. And also, I'll get
Yeah, that's good.
there's the big paper.
Oh, yeah, I think the mayor has ascertained there.
What am I doing?
That you know why the Boy Scouts are here. I mean,
Yeah, no, we're good.
I know.
My daughter's Girl Scout.
Girl Scout troop wants to come to council too. But there's 7 and that would be obnoxious.
Oh, so,
That
okay.
would be rad.
Okay, I think, are we ready?
Yep.
Okay. So, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody. This is the City of Ellensburg City Council meeting for the evening of Monday, November 15th, 2021. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. This evening we have a Boy Scout troop here to observe the workings of City Council and city government. So I thought it would be wonderful if we have a couple of the scouts that have volunteered to lead us in the pledge. So this would be, if you would, just introduce yourself, perhaps your troop, and then lead us in the pledge.
Hello, I am Chase Mayer. I am the senior patrol leader of Troop 493.
I am Ben Carter, and I am just a regular patrol leader of Troop 493.
Great, thank you and welcome. And if you would lead us in the pledge.
Everybody in the audience, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may
Thank
be
you.
seated. Thank you.
I never ask anybody to stand up. I know, after, that was good. If the clerk would call the roll.
Goodlow. Here. Lamb. Lilquist. Here. Miller.
Here.
Morgan. Here. Tab.
I'm here. Thank you. We have a couple things we'd like to get to on proclamations.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I think Councilmember Elliott was requesting.
Oh,
the
that's right. Thank
excused
you.
absence.
Councilmember Elliott is not able to make this evening's meeting and has requested an excused
I
absence.
move that Councilmember Elliott be given an excused absence.
Motion second for an excused absence for Councilmember Rich Elliott. All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. So we do have a couple of things up. I think under proclamations, or I'm not sure if it's proclamations or recognition. But before we get into our agenda, I'd like to recognize an individual that has served the city and this community well for years, and truthfully in ways that were more than just his employment. Gordon Crane, actually, I think you've now officially retired. But he has worked for the city for 42 years. During that time, he rose from a temporary draftsman beginning in June of 1979, hired into a regular full-time position as an engineering in 1980, and then worked in finance, worked his way through the engineering tech series, became a certified arborist, and then has subsequently served as the city's arborist since that time. Since 2014, his official position has been stormwater tech and urban horticulturist. I would just note, Gordon and I don't really know each other, but we have worked around each other for a number of years. There has never been a time, particularly around the arborist role and your horticultural knowledge, where you have not been willing to share that, where you've worked hard to make this community a greener community, recognizing the value of that work and how it contributes to our environment. I know that, or I believe that in addition, one of the things that you'll see Gordon on typically is a two-wheel thing called a bicycle, and has been, I think, a firm proponent of alternative modes of transportation and supporting actions and activities that truly make this a more sustainable world. And for that, truly, you are appreciated, and the work that you've done should be recognized. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could I add just
Sure,
briefly?
absolutely.
I just wanted to say thank you. I sit on the Washington Community Forestry Council, which is tasked with urban forestry throughout the state of Washington. And I will just say that Ellensburg is the first and the oldest tree city in the state of Washington. And Gordon's reputation travels far beyond our community. I just want to make the point that the folks at DNR over in Olympia that manage the urban community forestry program know Gordon's work, and I safely say that he has contributed greatly to Ellensburg's profile in the area of community forestry. So thank you for all of that, and thank you for making Ellensburg look good.
Thank you.
Again, I have one more, we're on 3A in our agenda. This is recognition of an Ellensburg military family. And I'm just going to read this. We received communication from Joseph Siemendal, who's the State Public Affairs Officer for the Washington National Guard. November is a month for family celebrations and gatherings and a time for togetherness and giving. November also provides an opportunity to honor military families, recognize their sacrifices, and celebrate their service. First declared as Military Family Month in 1996 by then President Bill Clinton, every year, the President of the United States signs a proclamation declaring November National Veterans and Military Families Month. This year, we are honoring 12 local Washington National Guard families for their support and sacrifice to our state and nation. The first family we are honoring is the Botten family, who are residents of Ellensburg. While supporting her husband, who's currently deployed to Poland as part of the NATO mission, Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group Poland, Brianna is balancing the significant demands of being a twin toddler mother, taking a non-existent family resource group program and turning that into a highly interactive and informative platform for recurrent family communication, publication of opportunities for families, publicity of unit operations, and has provided significant assistance to the family members. We just wanted to share that incredible story with you at the City Council and the Ellensburg community, and join us in thanking the Bottens for the commitment they have made, both for service and for the work that Brianna is accomplished in support of this community and families. So thank you. Also, just before, while we still have a crowd, because somehow we empty people out quickly. But I would also note, if you have the opportunity, for those folks in the room or those that are streaming, we had the opportunity Sunday to be at a dedication on the Palouse to Cascades John Wayne Trail between, I don't remember what streets they are.
Helena and Greenfield.
Helena and Greenfield. The Rotary Club worked to place monuments to each part of the service. And I think you were going to do this later, but that are now set on those stones in that area that's noted on the map. If you have an opportunity to wander that way, they're just incredible. It's a statement, I think, that's needed, but I also feel like it's an important piece for people to recognize the service and of all members of the services and the contribution they have made to this community and this country over time. And the work that Rotary did to place these in conjunction with the city was just amazing. So really, if you get a chance to see it, they're just, it's an incredible thing. They're very cool. So thank you for doing it. With that, then let's move to an approval of the agenda.
Motion approval of the agenda as presented. Second.
We have motion second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Moves us to consent. That dies for lack of a.
Motion to approve consent.
Yeah. Second.
We have motion and second to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Thank you. So that brings us to 6A. 6A is a Rotary Park Fieldhouse presentation. And I believe we have some members of the Rotary that would like to come forward. So if you could, again, just give your names and addresses as you're presenting, and then we'll kind of go from there. What would be the best for the camera?
You just need to hold it and rotate like Vanna White, right?
Super. And I'll start this out. Sure. So this is a group of Rotarians and community members that brought an idea to the city. And so we welcome them to present this idea to council. And so I think we have Jeff Greer kicking this off.
You do. Jeff Greer, 1410 West Dollarway Road. I'd like to thank Heidi and the council for taking the time for us tonight. It was about 22 years ago that, as a member of the Central Washington Park Foundation, I stood at this podium and asked the council to buy 360 acres of land in West Ellensburg. We told them that we thought that would be a good investment for our community. And it was a way that we could work together to solve the field problem that we had for our youth baseball players and soccer players. At the time, we had 52 teams and one field to play on. And so I think we've done a spectacular job of solving that problem as a community. The council and the county have worked fantastic together, along with the Rotary Club. So as a team, we've done a great job on that. We envision a park for all ages and all seasons, and I think we did a really good job on half of that. What we're here tonight to do is to ask you, let's do the other half, and that's to create some indoor space for recreation and sport in our community. Winter is long in Ellensburg, as you know, and gym space is at a real premium. The gyms are full from morning till midnight every day. And so we need more indoor space. When the school district was looking at building, one of the big things that came in of the community was we need more gymnasium space. We need more indoor space to play. So tonight we're going to propose that the council work with us and the county and the Rotary Club to create what we call a field house. Now, if you don't know what a field house is, think of a very large hay barn. And in this hay barn would be about half would be turf for soccer, rugby, football, all those types of things. The other half would be courts, basketball, tennis, pickleball, everything your mind can imagine. And then the perimeter of the entire facility would be an elevated walking track for walking and running, and a place for people just to go and walk when the hurricane's on or there's snow on the ground. We've worked with the county in the past because about half the user group is county and about half the user group is city. So it makes sense for us to work together to solve the problem for our taxpayers in a way that's fair to the taxpayers. That way the city's not paying for all the county users or vice versa. I want you to think of this as a sports facility, yes, but also a facility where a young family can bring their kids in the middle of January and there's snow and everybody's got cabin fever and run around and play on the field, get exercise, get indoors, socialize. So it's more than just a sports facility. It's really a recreation center for our community. We ask that you work with us tonight to help us solve the problem for the indoor space. I'm going to introduce Scott Rollins, and then Scott will introduce Bob, and then we will entertain any questions you have at the end. Scott?
Good evening again. Thanks for having us and listening to this consideration this evening. My name is Scott Rollins, 1677 Dodge Road, about 21 years in the valley now. This project was just waking up when I got here 21 years ago. And since then, I wanted to stress that Rotary, the city, and the county have worked as excellent partners one with another to develop this Rotary field, which now consists of 8 baseball fields, 8 soccer fields, a great MX track, a fantastic dog park, and there's a great space for this field house there. And it will work again, great cooperation between, and it's been done in the past, and I think we can do it again. Bob Ford.
Jeff, I also want to introduce Jill Wade, who's been instrumental in bringing this project to life.
She's the boss.
Yeah, she keeps us all in line. Let's just be honest about that. We thought it would be helpful to give you kind of an overview of what does a field house look like on a grander scale. We have worked with CDA Architecture to develop some renderings based on some of the programming input that we had derived. And we came up with the list of activities and program spaces based off of interactions with our other like sport activities within the community at all levels. So organizations like KVGSA, we've reached out to them and asked about their support. Other programs in volleyball, football, you name the different sports and activities in the community, and one of us has had some connection or interaction with them to help inform this process. But what you're not going to see in this program is something that's really single sport dominant. It really is about a cross section that serves our community as a whole. We're still dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. And if you recall last winter, one of the biggest challenges was trying to find indoor spaces when our school district programs were shut down and the buildings were not available. The city didn't have its own access to facilities and created some major challenges too. So we tried to keep some of those type of variables in long-term planning. How do you plan for those type of long-term impacts? And so this could help meet those needs as well. You see the field house here is, as we're calling it, the project, because we haven't landed on a good name, and who knows, maybe we'll find someone who wants to put their name on it and help support the project as well. But it's there in Rotary Park, using existing kind of spaces around it to navigate to the space and to kind of really anchor and support those facilities as well. When you look inside the space, we're really intentional about this setup. We really want it to be transparent and visible and open. We don't want people to come in and feel like they're boxed in or closed in. We want to create that sense of activity and have people be able to see what's happening throughout the building and really bring life to the space. So you see a field, soccer specific here, but can be easily turned into flag football, bubble ball. You could bring out chairs and do adult yoga. You could do all kinds of activities on this space. And the elevated jogging track, which we're going to talk about here some more in a second, also gives us a nice overhang where we could actually build out some programmable spaces that are more sport specific. So think about everything from archery to batting cages, heavy bag rooms or spaces, things that would otherwise maybe take up larger program spaces could be encompassed under those under that square footage. So no space would go unused. So kind of here's the big dream: 4 play fields, 95 by 220 each, including soccer, rugby, lacrosse, football, flag football, softball, baseball, and building in some of those lines secondarily and primarily. So it's easy setup and tear down, so that from a facility management perspective, it's easy to transition from one activity to the next. The next section would, other half of the facility would be 4 multi-court sports, which are hard court services, not wood, not basketball gym floors, but actually like a vulcanized type rubber. And we have some of the samples and things that we could share as well. But they're very high use functioning spaces that can be transitioned quickly as well. Batting cages, indoor golf and archery. Uh-oh, there's something not working. Oh, thank you. Sorry for you folks online that weren't able to stay along with us. We're only 2 slides in, so you didn't miss much. The elevated jogging track, you saw that. Training areas under the track, hopefully some changing rooms, restrooms, etc. But also the track would be wide enough that you could have some spectator viewing from it while maintaining activity around the space. So just some really unique ways to utilize and use the space and get the most out of it. Also including some concession and maybe hosting areas for families who are interacting or out of the fields for a long period of time if we bring in tournaments or different tours and activities that could use the space. One of the great things about this building is, like Jeff said, picture a big barn, but you can also make it look a little bit appealing by some simple architectural features and also create spaces adjacent to it that are wind blocked, weather protected, and expand some outdoor activities in more inclement weather. So now I can't scroll, can I? There we go. So here's that indoor track, elevated jogging track, giving you a sense of that space. Again, want it to be really accessible, easy to use, and something that anybody can go on and use throughout the day, not just reserved space time program. Activities, believe it or not, archery, right? Golf. We can do all these things in this space. It really does lend itself to that because we're dividing the spaces by different nets, and they can go up and down and be quickly removed. Obviously, indoor soccer is a great space as well. Flag football, batting cages, as I talked about, bubble soccer. For those of you that have never seen it before, kind of a fun activity. But again, something that appeals across the spectrum of activities. I don't know if the Boy Scouts would appreciate a program like this, but it seems like something you'd have a lot of fun with. Here's a facility we wanted to quickly share and highlight, the field house at Finch Creek Park. So we're not doing it the first. We wouldn't be the first to do this. We're learning from other programs who have already gone in and ventured into this. And in fact, something unique about this Finch Creek Park program is that it was so successful that the city actually sold the program to a private enterprise, not because it was failing and needed support, but because financially they could then take the resources and go on to do the next project to continue to grow out the recreational activities within the program. So something interesting that's maybe not typical when you think about some of the activities and investments that some folks make. It really does separate itself as other facilities across the country in the fact that it has both hard and soft court spaces. And that's something really unique to this field house proposal. It meets a broader spectrum of needs, which we really like about it. So here's the hard court spaces. Pickleball is a really hot topic in our community currently. And there's high demand for those court spaces. And during the winter times, they don't exist. So we can build those into these multi-sport spaces. Volleyball, cheerleading camps, the chair yoga I talked about could be on these hard courts or on the field sport spaces. a program called futsal for those of you that ever experienced that. That's pretty fun. It's actually a slightly weighted soccer ball, so it doesn't travel as far in the indoor space. And then lastly, like I talked about, this could be an anchor facility in really tying and building out the park space. I know that there's been a splash pad on the horizon. We've talked about that for our kids during the summertime. How great would it be not to have 30-mile-an-hour winds blowing across it? Put that towards one side of the facility that helps block that wind, creating utility spaces for kids to use, park and recreational activities on playground equipment, and then maybe even some outdoor covered field space adjacent to the building that could be used for drop and play. So that's really our presentation. I think we're probably at the 10-minute mark. So thank you for your time, and we'd just like to open it up for any questions you might have.
Great. No, thanks for the work that's gone into this and taking the time to come down. Questions?
Do you have an estimated price tag? I mean,
You know, as you know, the construction world is a little challenging right now. So we think that it's going to be an $8 to $10 million project total. You know, steel's up 300%, so that gets you close to the 10. Hopefully in a year when we're ready to start, we'll be closer to 10.
thank you.
Other questions?
I was curious, what did you calculate the overall square footage, the footprint, not accounting for the mezzanine level area
It's
necessarily?
about 200,000.
Other questions?
I took my granddaughter to her gym practice a little while back. She started practice at 10 at night. And she went to school.
Okay.
Well, just what kind of partnership are you seeking?
So we think certain things make sense. We're going to ask.
So Jeff, can I get you up to the mic?
Oh, excuse me. Certain things make sense to us. What we'd ask the city to pay for half, we'd ask the county to pay for half. And then we would work with our community groups and things that make sense for us to do on a volunteer basis. You know, Rotarians aren't going to swing steel 50 feet in the air. Well, not for very long. So, you know, we would contract a lot of it. Part of the city's resource will be to give up some of their staff time. You have a public works department that's just awesome. You know, they contract for buildings and roads and sewers all the time. So we would depend on their expertise with that. And then the city would own and operate it over time.
Actually progress.
Is that better? Okay. I mean, a community center or just more gym space, whatever you want to call it, has been a need of our community for a long time, especially people with young kids. We've been asking for this for a long time. But it's not been something that we've been able to just come up with the resources before. I'm not sure. You said we could start this in a year. Do you have private partnerships lined up? Have you talked to the county? What would the actual progression for a project like this be?
We've had preliminary meetings with the county. We're going to go to a commissioners meeting in January. And then we just have to work through the details. I think from the sale of that property in West Ellensburg, I think we're north of $3 million that we sold excess property to. So if you think in terms of that, you don't have to come up with a lot more than we've already made off the West Ellensburg Park. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another story.
You did have to pay for the land.
Well, okay, so I mean, I want to, again, thank you for coming down. It feels like it's conceptually, I think none of us would argue that it would be cool. I think it's how we actually get to that. It would be interesting to see the county's response. And I think the other piece that as a city we would need to work through is the ongoing maintenance and operations is probably as big a deal for us as it would be to look at the capitalization piece.
Sure.
I mean, we're struggling now with the racket club, for instance. You know, and this takes that square footage and multiplies it by God knows what.
Don't overlook that user fees should pay for all that. Maintenance and
Well,
upkeep
all
and-
I'm suggesting is those would be the pieces that if we're going to move forward, we need to have clarity on. You know, I mean, just in terms of, well, I mean, I don't think any of you would want to put the city in a position. You recognize the responsibility the city has with the resources that we have. And would not want to put and realistically, if it fails because of maintenance and operations, it's not a successful project. I mean, it's just that simple. So sounds like we could kick it back, perhaps see where the county wants to go with it and then revisit.
Correct. So one of the council strategic vision or goals as we move forward into the next year is sustainable infrastructure and parks, and discussions about what a community center, what community infrastructure we need in our community is on the agenda. And we will be inviting more discussion about that, hosting that at a council level and community level. So we have definitely room to discuss this.
So it's, yeah. So again, thank you. I don't think at any means that it's necessarily dead just because we're not writing a check.
I think we would if we could.
Well, go ahead. You're good. Again, thanks. I mean, that was an
Yeah, with
incredible
that
amount
3
of work
million
that was
we
distilled
sold
into
the
10
Ellensburg.
minutes. So that's cool. Okay, let's move on then. Our next would be a COVID-19 update. I think that would be Mackenzie.
Hi there. I am Mackenzie Carter, a health promotion project specialist with the Public Health Department here. I'm going to share my screen and do a presentation for you guys on the preliminary results from our COVID-19 vaccine survey. Okay. There we go. All right. I am joined here by our assessment coordinator, Leanne Bradshaw, if there are questions at the end. Okay, so the survey was created by the Kittitas County Public Health Department to better serve the residents of Kittitas County. The survey asked questions to help us understand the community's behaviors, concerns, and beliefs surrounding the COVID-19 vaccinations. So the survey was distributed both online and physically. Online, the survey link was posted to the Public Health website and our Facebook page. The link was also emailed out through community organizations such as KitDam, Kittitas County Health Network, Rotary clubs, and more. The physical surveys, as you can see here on the slide, were distributed throughout the county at doctor's offices, social and health service sites, CWU, Ellensburg Library, and several other community locations. The survey was available in both English and Spanish, online and in paper form. The survey was open from September 10th through October 8th, 2021. In order for our survey to be representative of the entire county, we needed at least 382 responses. In total, we received 1,601, and after data cleaning, we were left with 1,493 complete responses, 62 of which were in Spanish. So the data cleaning was performed on the responses for a couple of reasons in this survey. First, to remove incomplete surveys to help reduce bias. We removed responses that were completed by residents outside of Kittitas County, and we also removed inauthentic responses, such as those that used gibberish or only used profanity in their responses. So the following questions are from the demographic portion of the survey, and these were completely optional to respondents. So about a quarter of respondents were 35 to 44 years old. And as you can see here, we have a nice mix of different age ranges. About 3/4 of respondents were female, about 21% male, and then a handful of other gender identities represented. So this chart shows the difference between how much these cities and unincorporated portions of Kittitas County represent the entire population versus the respondents from the survey. So as you can see, about 80% of the responses came from Ellensburg, 9% from Cle Elum, and then smaller amounts throughout the rest of the county. 91% of our respondents identified as white or Caucasian, and about 9% identified as Hispanic or Latino. The next set of questions were related to healthcare and the COVID-19 vaccine specifically. So 66% of respondents said that they were covered through their employer's insurance plan. Interestingly, about 4% of respondents said that they did not have any type of health insurance. And then you can see there's an assortment of other coverage plans. So we asked questions about the flu shot for both adults and children, as you'll see later on. And the reason we wanted to look at this was because some data has shown that people who get their flu shot in a typical year are more likely to have gotten the COVID-19 vaccine. So we wanted to compare that and see if there was a connection within our community as well. So in a typical year, do you get a flu shot? 63% of respondents said yes, and 36% said no. So within the survey, 77.2% of respondents said they were vaccinated. Of those vaccinated respondents, 75.9% usually get a flu shot in a typical year. And of those respondents, 90.5% have a nurse or doctor that they usually see. For comparison, 22.8% of respondents to the survey identified as unvaccinated. Only 17.7% of them usually get a flu shot in a typical year, which is about a 58% decrease from the vaccinated respondents we saw. And about 80.8% of the unvaccinated respondents have a nurse or doctor they usually see. So this pie chart has a little breakdown of the different types of vaccines that the vaccinated respondents got. So 56% said they got Pfizer, 39% got the Moderna vaccines, and 5% got the Johnson & Johnson. So at the time of the survey, 96.8% of people had received their second dose if they got the Pfizer or Moderna 2-dose series. 3.2% had not received the second dose at the time of the survey. And the majority of people said they had not gotten it because they were still within their 3 to 4 week time period between vaccine doses. Other concerns that made people not get their second dose were worries about temporary side effects and concerns about vaccine safety. So the top 3 reasons that people answered of 15 to 20 different options, they ranked their top 3 responses for why they got the COVID-19 vaccine. So the top answer was being vaccinated is important for the health of others in my community, followed by getting the vaccine decreases the likelihood of me getting infected with COVID-19. And then the third response was vaccines are important for my health. So from this survey, 83.8% of the unvaccinated respondents are unlikely or very unlikely to get vaccinated in the future. So for comparison, people were given a number of options and asked to rank their top 3 reasons for not getting COVID-19 vaccinations. First top answer was, I'm waiting for more information about possible long-term side effects. Now, just to note, these people aren't talking about looking a year or 2 down the road. They're talking decades worth of research. And this is tricky because this isn't something that we can address immediately. This is not information that we will have for that period of time. The second response was, I'm worried about whether the vaccine is safe. And the third response was, I do not believe the vaccine works well enough. And those bottom 2 responses are things that we can work on messaging to address about the safety and the efficacy of the vaccines. So this question asked, How worried do you feel that you or someone in your immediate family might become seriously ill from COVID-19? And if you look on the two different ends of this chart on very worried, you see that the green bar representing the vaccinated respondents, 29.5% of them said that they were very worried about this concern. And on the very opposite end, another 29.5% of unvaccinated individuals said that they were not worried at all about this concern. So the survey was open to any resident of Kittitas County aged 18 or over. If a respondent said that they were a parent or guardian for a child 0 to 17 years old, they were provided an additional set of questions to answer. So out of the entire group of survey respondents, 41.1% identified as a parent or guardian of a child 0 to 17 years old. And of those respondents, 97.7% of those children have a regular nurse, doctor, or clinic. So again, looking at the correlation between whether a flu shot can predict or better explain COVID-19 vaccination. So for children, it looked at, in a typical year, does your child or children get a flu shot? 58% said yes, and 40% said no. People were asked, in a typical year, do you follow the recommended annual vaccination schedule for your child or children? 82% said yes, and 18% said no. And then for the COVID-19 vaccine, has your child or children who are 12 to 17 years old received the COVID-19 vaccine? 55% said yes, and 45% said no. This is interesting because as of November 10th in Kittitas County, the 12 to 17-year-old age range is only 30.4% fully vaccinated. So the sample in this is more vaccinated than is representative of the entire county. So just as a comparison here, if you look at the COVID-19 vaccination, the people who say that their child 12 to 17 years old has been vaccinated have much higher odds of getting a flu shot and of having a routine vaccine schedule adherence. So these are the same types of ideas as we saw for the adults, listing their top 3 reasons for getting the COVID vaccine here in the 12 to 17-year-old age range. 79.5% of the parent or caregiver respondents are unlikely or very unlikely to get their child or children vaccinated in the future against COVID-19. These are similar reasons, again, for not wanting to get the COVID-19 vaccine. The only difference you'll see here is that the third most common response for not vaccinating a 12 to 17-year-old was that the child did not want to be vaccinated. So the disclaimer here is at the time of the survey, the COVID-19 vaccines were not yet approved for 5 to 11-year-olds. They are currently approved and recommended. But at the time, this was just the intent to vaccinate. 45.5% of parents said that they did want to vaccinate their kid against COVID-19. 36.9% said no, and 17.6% were unsure. Again, very similar reasons that we've seen in the adults and the older children for the top 3 reasons to get the COVID-19 vaccine. And again, the top 3 reasons about vaccine hesitance that we see in adults and both child groups are concerns about the safety of the vaccine, the long-term side effects, and how effective it is. Okay, so wrapping up, here are some next steps. So based on these preliminary results, we are working on a couple of things. Specifically, as I mentioned, the 5 to 11-year-olds are now eligible to get the COVID vaccine. So we're working really hard on getting messaging out to parents, letting them know that the kids can and are recommended to get that vaccine. We're working on overall COVID-19 messaging for vaccinations. We are doing further data analysis. As I said, these are just preliminary results. The final report will be available on our website. We will post and announce when that report is available. We are anticipating winter of 2022. A group of us are applying to present this information at a rural health conference in the spring. And we are also working to communicate this information with providers in the community. So my questions for you all: what else are you guys interested in seeing? And what do you think is important for people to see?
Thank you, Council.
I did not feel that any of that was very surprising, the results of the survey. And like Mackenzie said, the intent was really to customize messaging and information to the community. And there is a little bit of wiggle room for that 17% who are unsure about whether or not they're going to vaccinate their kids, and getting more information about the safety, the efficacy, but what else to do with that information, I think, is still eluding everyone in public health.
I mean, the long and short is there wasn't, the next steps are the messaging and where and how you do the messaging. But I mean, it seemed like it was sort of touched on in the last slide, but not in any level of detail. When we first got into COVID, there was quite a bit of coordination around messaging, and there were significant resources invested in community-wide messaging that still exists today. I mean, you can still go into shops that were part of that initial rollout. So, I mean, I think, I can't speak for the rest of council, but the piece for me is continuity, consistency of messaging and platforms that you're using that potentially are effective. And I mean, that's good information, but it wasn't evident in the presentation.
I would add to that. I think it's also helpful to get periodic updates to highlight the progress that's been made. I know it's painfully slow progress in some ways, but I think the story gets better over time, not worse, in terms of that. I think it's important to incorporate that into the messaging.
Any other questions? I appreciate the information. Sample was interesting. Your percentage of respondents were much more, had a greater tendency to be vaccinated than what I believe is the current rate of vaccination in the county.
That's correct, yes.
So you had,
I think it also confirmed the gender division between female and male, which
Well,
confirms
yeah.
that what we already knew in terms of.
okay. We've still got quite a bit to get through. Is there anything else that anybody wants to add? Thank you, Mackenzie.
Thank you very much.
Then I think we need, we're going to get to citizen comment now on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address council on issues which are not on the agenda. Comments must concern, Matt, I know you guys are wanting to leave, but my belief here is that there are folks who will give testimony that probably your troop may want to sit through this. I don't know how many folks we've got ultimately that are going to want to talk. But I recognize some of the names now. So let's move on then. This is citizen comment on non-agenda. Comments must concern the city's business or a matter over which the council has control. When you're recognized, please approach podium and microphone provided. Please state your name and address, whether you're representing only yourself or others. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. If you do have some written comments, please submit them to the city clerk. Comments of a personal, impertinent, or derogatory nature will not be tolerated. We will recognize folks that are in the room first, and then move to those folks who are online. If you are online and wish to provide comment on non-agenda, please raise your virtual hand and be recognized. I can't remember the star, whatever it is, if you're on a phone, but I don't see anybody on a phone. Also, please note again that the city council will, our rules provide that no action will be taken at this meeting. You may wish to concisely state your concern and request placement on your matter in a future agenda. Lee Bates is the first individual who signed up.
Good evening. I'm double masked. I hope you can hear me. I'm here again to talk about the traffic and safety issues around the two new elementary schools, most notably Idenase and Aronica. I did some homework this weekend and compiled a booklet for each council member. I hope you will read it and think critically about it. I'd just like to read something from one of the pages titled Proposals for Increasing Safety Measures. Following is a list of minimum safety precautions that need to be implemented as soon as possible. A, install flashing caution lights activated by trail users like those used on the campus of CWU. B, appropriate signage for traffic. One sign facing south on Cora, one sign facing motorists exiting Idenase Elementary. C, remove the stop signs directed at trail users. They're still staring at trail users in the face. I understand the idea is for safety concerns. I strongly recommend that citizens of Ellensburg who drive motor vehicles understand that they are responsible for stopping and being aware of pedestrians in a sidewalk. D, install appropriate caution signs on the PC trail for trail users. E, improve visibility by clearing and or cutting foliage and removing other obstacles on or near the trail and minimize visual clutter. And I have a couple of photos of that as an example. F, handheld speed sensors, also known as radar guns, for trained volunteers to monitor motorist speed. And I'd just like to review the RCW from the state of Washington. Number 46.61235, titled Crosswalks, says the following. The operator of an approaching vehicle shall stop and remain stopped to allow a pedestrian, a bicycle, or personal delivery device to cross the roadway within an unmarked or marked crosswalk. When the pedestrian, bicycle, or personal delivery device is upon or within one lane of the half of the roadway upon which the vehicle is traveling, or, excuse me, I gotta turn the page, onto which it is turning. For purposes of this section, quote, half of the roadway means all traffic traffic lanes carrying traffic in one direction.
That's your 3 minutes, Lee.
Thank you. You
Thank
can
you.
read it for yourself.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And then just for the scouts that are still in the room, the RCW is actually the revised code of Washington. It's the laws that are passed by the legislature that we have to live by. Lee Kaspari.
Thank you. My name's Lee Kaspari. I live at 1718 Bluegrass Lane. And I was a licensed realtor in the state of Colorado for 32 years, which brings my questions to mind.
Yeah, if I, just a second, Lee, if you would. Ben, and is that coming, is that Mike? Are you picking Lee up? Okay. Yeah, a little bit louder would be good, I think, for the mic, the speakers in the room, if you could. Thank you.
Okay, from my background, I just have a question. Basically, I was wondering in the purchase and sales agreement, and this is who I gave a copy to everybody on the council of the property for the school. Is it possible to have a copy of the engineer's plans for Cora Street that goes north from 15th to where that ends at the school? I think this should have been provided to the school board. For example, I have a copy of a memo of December 2019 pertaining to the traffic impact analysis. And what I think is so significant on this is perhaps part of my DNA was my dad never signed his name without putting PE after a professional engineer. So in that report, it has a stamp of Matthew Morrow McDonald, registered professional engineer, state of Washington, and then the date of 12/4/19. So I'm wondering if it's possible if there was a further engineer's report where he had to sign off on the practicality of the pros and cons of Forestry. Thank you.
Thank you. Might respond. Just, you can certainly file a public records request specific to that. And if we have that, that would be provided.
We'll just take that as a public records request.
Okay, good. Thank you. Nancy Kaspari.
Hi, my name's Nancy Kaspari. I live at 1718 North Bluegrass Lane. And first off, I want to thank Nancy Lindquist for being the only one that has corresponded with me with some of my complaints. And I do appreciate having some feedback. I've sent my complaints to everyone here and everyone on the school board, and she is the only one that's reached out. So I do appreciate that. I want to say my concerns still are speeding up our Bluegrass Lane is continuing to be a huge problem. I would say some people are still going 30 to 40 miles an hour, if not more. I'm not saying all of them, but it's all, you can almost tell it's people that are late getting their kid to school, or they're late getting to school, or they're late getting back to work. And it's a very scary situation. I also want to say the trail crossing, I'm also going to touch on that. It's also still a huge problem with speeders and the pedestrians being the ones that could possibly get injured, and there not being that right away there. Me and my friend went for a walk the other day. We took our dogs and we walked at 8 in the morning, and we walked down the trail to Reesa Creek. On our return from Reesa Creek, we happened to hit the trail during the peak, which we didn't realize we were there at the peak of the people driving to Ida Nason. Again, huge lines trying to get there. We tried to cross on the crosswalk 3 different times, and 3 cars speeded in front of us as fast as they could. I mean, I swear they were going 30 to 35 miles an hour in a 20-mile-an-hour school zone. We decided to try again. We walked about quarter way down across the crosswalk. Another truck sped in front of us and just cut us off. I was shaking. I was fearful for my life, and at the same time, there were 3 children on bicycles on the other side of the crosswalk. There were 3 other children and a parent also trying to cross the crosswalk. Nobody was giving anyone any kind of pedestrian right away. And these are children that are going to the school. Not only are adults being concerned about this, but I'm concerned about the children as well. Then another one of my fears that happened the other day, there's a big, huge, that's it.
10 seconds.
There's a big, huge pool dugout area right as you cross over the trail on the right side going into Ida Nason. It was filled with about a foot of water the other day, and there was a little girl that was probably a first grader, was going along the edge of it. And
That's your
that is
feelings.
another fear, that a kid could fall in. There's no
Thank you.
guardrails, there's no fence. Thank you.
Does anyone, those are the folks that I have signed up. Does anyone else wish to approach council over non-agenda items?
Thank you. Pat Kelleher, 6530 Wilson Creek Road. From what I've seen up on Cora Street, it's not whether an accident will happen, it's just when an accident will happen. Buses coming up there, they have to use their flashers to navigate the street. There's queuing in a no parking zone all the way back to the entrance to Mount Stewart. You heard the issues the local neighborhood is experiencing in their neighborhood, the crosswalk situation. It's just a matter of when. But what I want to focus on is, you know, when you build a $23 million project, you have obligations, you have mitigation obligations. The city worked with the school district to avoid over $3 million of mitigation that would have been required of a normal developer if you put a housing complex in there or a business or whatever was permitted. And as part of that mitigation, the plan, the traffic plan that was modified and approved said that they would use the excess parking or use the parking if needed at Mount Stewart for Ida Mason. This was confirmed last council meeting by a sitting school board member who stated both that she used the far parking lot with 125 parking spaces and used the near parking lot of 80 spaces and just thought that was fine. Okay, that was the plan. It was approved. Why are we still queuing on Cora Street? The city, the school district doesn't pay anything to maintain city streets. They don't pay any property taxes. We paid for the school. We paid the $23 million, the mitigation plan. We want I want our street back. Okay, you don't allow McDonald's to run a special at noon and queue on Main Street. Why would you allow a school to queue on a street daily, routinely, not once in a while event? This is routine. Set your watch, 3:03, you'll start queuing. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else in the room wish to approach council over a non-agenda item? We do have one person virtually. Becky Pearson has her hand up.
Thank you. Hi, let me see if I can, it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to show my face, but I'm sitting here. So you're seeing just my photo. But hi, I'm Becky Pearson. My address is 1115 East 3rd Avenue in Ellensburg, and I serve as a co-coordinator for a local organization, Our Environment. I represent OE and myself as a member of this community. OE is a grassroots organization dedicated to building and maintaining a climate-conscious, proactive community and livable world through education and advocacy for environmentally sustainable policies and actions in Kittitas County and beyond. I'm here to request that the Ellensburg City Council proclaim December 10 to be Environmental Rights Awareness Day. December 10 is the date the international community, along with locales around the United States, observes Human Rights Day commemorating the day in 1948 that the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Currently, more than 150 countries have enshrined environmental protection or a right to a healthy environment in their constitutions. And on October 8th, the United Nations Human Rights Council recognized for the first time that having a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is a human right. As noted by UN Environment Program authors, human rights and the environment are intertwined. Human rights cannot be enjoyed without a safe, clean, and healthy environment, and sustainable environmental governance cannot exist without the establishment of and respect for human rights. This relationship is increasingly recognized. Environmental rights are composed of substantive rights and procedural rights. Substantive rights are rights such as the rights to life and freedom, rights to health, food, and an adequate standard of living, rights to access religious sites, and the rights of Indigenous peoples. These are rights that, in part, depend on the environment and its health. Procedural rights are those rights that are really tools to achieve substantive rights, including access to information, public participation, and access to justice. Building awareness of environmental rights is part of educating ourselves about human rights. This education is in turn essential for ensuring those rights. Recognizing December 10th as Ellensburg's Environmental Rights Awareness Day is a good fit for our community as we continue engaging together in positive and productive discussions and movement toward a sustainable future of locally relevant solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to approach council? I think our Boy Scouts have left, but I want to thank them for sitting through the process. Hopefully that was a window into both what council hears and what we occasionally can do. And Becky, I would say if you can get us a copy of that proclamation, or we would certainly review it and look at getting it on the agenda.
Excellent. I did, oh, sorry. I did send it. I sent that exact comment that I read, but should I expand on it? Should I put a bunch of whereases and things like that? Or should I just leave it as is for?
I didn't realize that that had come in.
I had
Oh, yeah.
that information to you guys through email, so you have it. So I thought.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't get that notice. Anyway, okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on down then. We're on 8A. This is 102. This is a public hearing. It's like frightening. Okay, this is a public hearing. I've got a script that we're going to walk through. This is a legislative hearing to consider first reading of an ordinance to amend the 2021 to 2022 biennial budget. Purpose of this legislative hearing is for the City Council to consider first reading of an ordinance to amend the 2021-2022 biennial budget. Public hearing is now open, and I ask your cooperation in the following procedure. Everyone will be given an opportunity to be heard. The city clerk will be making a recording of the proceedings. I will first recognize requests to testify from anyone attending this hearing in person, followed by any persons attending remotely via Zoom. If you wish to participate virtually via Zoom, please raise your virtual hand on the Zoom meeting screen or press *9 if you're connected by telephone. Wait until you've been recognized and you've been unmuted. When you're invited to speak, begin by stating your name and address. Indicate whether you're speaking for yourself individually or as a spokesperson for a certain group or both. Speak slowly and clearly. Only one person will be allowed to speak at a time. Any questions of staff will be directed through council. Before we do hear from the audience, is there a staff report to be presented?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Keith Bassett with the city's finance department. The ordinance before you this evening amends the 2021-2022 biennial budget to reflect changes in operational requirements and to capital project plans approved through prior council action, along with other modifications to the biennial budget. For those of you following along the agenda report, figures for each item by fund can be found on table 1, beginning on page 107 of the agenda report, or excuse me, of the agenda packet. Since the prior supplemental budget was adopted, several items have been approved by City Council that require budget adjustments in order to be implemented. The anticipated budget impacts are presented as part of the city's standard agenda reports, and they accompany each of the initial requests. The proposed ordinance will officially authorize expenditures in support of those previously approved projects and program changes. Items in the ordinance that have previously come before council include the Pearl Street Promenade Study, refunding of the 2010 General Obligation Maintenance Bond, additional expenditure authority for the annual tree trimming contract bid came in higher than was budgeted. Funding source adjustment for Gateway 2 grant project, including additional funds from the Sales Tax Reserve Fund, approval of the Teamster Cruise collective bargaining agreement, and just this evening, additional expenditure authority for engineering services for Gateway 1 project, fully offset with an anticipated reimbursement with no impact to budgeted ending fund balance. Additional budget adjustments have been identified as a result of a review of anticipated expenditures, expenditure trends, current expenditure authority. These items provide the necessary budget to maintain the programs, projects previously adopted by council and comply with external regulations and update budgeted amounts for current forecasts. Items include funding pest abatement and remediation at the Ellensburg Racket and Recreation Center, funded through Risk Management Fund accumulated reserves, accelerated relocation and replacement of the Walnut Street rectifier and anodes for the natural gas system safety. And transportation items include purchase of de-icing material to maintain safe travel on main and secondary arterial streets. And this item is in particular due to rising costs of materials and the amount of material used last winter, and requires additional expenditure authority to continue that program for this winter. Central Transit received $142,983 distribution of federal funding directly through the American Rescue Plan Act, which is recognized in the proposed ordinance. The proposed ordinance also adjusts expenditures and revenues to reflect updated projections for spending in the Health and Benefits Fund, including the impact of COVID-19, and transfer in of $650,000 from the city's coronavirus local fiscal recovery fund federal allocation via the American Rescue Plan Act. The proposed supplemental budget includes adjustments to city self-insured employee medical insurance premium rates set for 2022, including a 16% increase for medical and vision portion of the insurance premiums. The 2021 legislature implemented several police reform laws, which will require significant resources and change to institute with a July 25th, 2021 implementation date. It created a situation with significant additional training required to reduce risk and mitigate employee liability. And the ordinance includes an additional $14,500 for police training and related travel. Additionally, KitCom rates for 2022 require a $82,229 increase for the police department budget. The proposed supplemental budget funds additional police positions for 2022 to address existing workload. One additional full-time permanent detective position would augment the existing detectives unit. The current caseload is significant in total cases and complexity of investigations. Additionally, one full-time permanent administrative sergeant position would be created, funded beginning in July 2022. And the position would assist command staff and the chief with overall operation of the department, and with dramatic increase in legislative reform, mandatory training requirements, and increased public interest in the police policies and practices, the need for managing the increased workload has surpassed the current command staff's available time. Both police positions would be funded from the Criminal Justice Fund 3/10 criminal justice sales tax revenue. There's sufficient balance and projected revenue for both positions. The proposed budget includes additional funding to position the city to advance additional council priorities, specifically $120,000 to develop a sustainability plan and energy strategy, $10,000 to expand capacity for city communications, including accessibility, translation, and outreach, $75,000 for housing action plan implementation funded with Department of Commerce grant, resources to help the community garden relocate from the city parcels directed for affordable housing, and $10,000 to support the mission of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. The proposed supplemental budget also reflects council direction for the coronavirus local fiscal recovery fund federal allocation via the American Rescue Plan Act, the $650,000 transfer for health and benefits fund for employee COVID-19 healthcare costs paid from the city self-insurance plan, $1.8 million for Unity Park. Excuse me, Unity Park and Pearl Street Promenade design, construction, and artwork. $400,000 for limited duration grant and project manager position. $400,000 towards gateway investments in the major entrances to the city, and $2.65 million for the Anderson Road Sewer Project construction. With the exception of the transfer for prior healthcare costs, these items will continue to be carried forward as necessary and included in the 2023-2024 biennium proposed preliminary budget at the appropriate time as well. The budget amendments in the proposed ordinance include updated revenue forecasts and beginning fund balances as needed, and maintain anticipated 2021 and 2022 ending fund balances within the required fund balance thresholds per city policy. And in summary, the proposed ordinance increases budgeted 2021 expenditures by approximately $2.3 million and revenue by approximately $2.2 million. Increases budgeted 2022 expenditures by approximately $1.5 million and revenue by $16,628. And the effect of the proposed amendments on the budgeted 2022 ending fund balance is a decrease of approximately $1.7 million. The public hearing this evening and proposed ordinance meet the statutory requirements for a mid-biennial review process required of code cities in the second year of the biennial budget. And at the conclusion of the public hearing, staff would recommend council proceed with first reading of the mid-biennial review ordinance.
Thank you. Floor is now open to testimony from the public. Each person will have an opportunity to address council for an initial period not to exceed 5 minutes. If more time is needed, it will remain available after everyone has had an opportunity to speak. Does anyone from the public wish to approach council over this matter? Seeing no one, does staff have anything to add? Council, do you have questions of the staff or public? Public testimony portion of this hearing is now closed. Council may now begin discussion and deliberation of the matter. Council.
I move we proceed with first reading of the mid-biennial review supplemental budget ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and second to conduct first reading of ordinance 4881, which is the supplemental budget ordinance. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to thank staff for, listening to council priorities and fitting those in, bringing those forward for next year, which is just a mid-year, mid-budget adjustment, but there's some significant changes in here that really reflect the discussions that we've been having. So I appreciate it.
I want to say that it was an extremely readable report. Thank you.
Thanks. Council, we have a motion second to conduct first reading of ordinance 4881. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion carries. Clerk will read.
An ordinance amending the 2021-2022 biennial budget of the city of Ellensburg as set forth in ordinance number 4864 and previously amended as set forth in ordinance 4875 to adjust appropriations in the city's funds.
Thank you. That brings us to 9B. This is the resolution to approve fiscal year 2021 bad debt write-offs. We're on page 120 in your packet.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
What do we do?
We're on 9A.
115.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. Yeah.
You're trying.
It wasn't intentional, but maybe it was. 9A, this is the second reading of ordinance 4880 for the 2022 property tax levy. Page 115.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. This ordinance reflects the 2022 levy for property taxes to be collected in 2022 for municipal purposes. The ordinance establishes the 2022 regular property tax levy, the 2022 excess property tax levy, and certifies the 2022 property tax levy to the Kittitas County Commissioners. State law limits the increase in property taxes to lower 1% over the prior year levy rate or the implicit price deflator, IPD, a measure of inflation. The IPD inflation rate for setting 2022 property tax was 3.86%. Therefore, the city was limited by 101% of the prior levy rate. Sales tax revenue is a significant portion, property tax revenue is a significant portion of the general fund budget. And council has very limited control over the revenue and funding sources that support those general governmental activities. And without increases in general fund revenues, such as property tax, the city couldn't fund necessary cost increases without tapping fund balance. For 2022, the city is expecting many general governmental expenditures to increase at or above the IPD rate. Adoption of Ordinance 4880 at 1% will increase property tax revenue by $33,669. The proposed 2022 budget includes that 1% increase. For purposes of illustration, an average property assessed at $300,000 would see about a $2 per year increase in property taxes. Council conducted public hearing at your last meeting and conducted first reading of the ordinance as well. And staff recommends conducting second reading and adoption of Ordinance 4880.
Thank you, council.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion second to conduct second reading and adoption of ordinance 4880. The property tax levy. Is there any further discussion? If the clerk would call the roll.
Bidwell,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Lilquist,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
Morgan,
Yes.
Tab.
Yes, motion carries.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Ellensburg, Washington, levying property taxes for the City of Ellensburg for the fiscal year commencing January 1st, 2022 on all property in said city which is subject to taxation for the purpose of paying sufficient revenue to carry on general operations, recognize voter-approved levies, and pay debt service obligations of said city as required by law.
Thank you. Now, I think we move to 9B, which is still Keith, which is the confusing part. This is a resolution to approve fiscal year 2021 bad debt write-offs.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and Council. Again, Keith Bassett with the city's finance department. The proposed resolution authorizes the write-off of uncollectible utility accounts, miscellaneous invoices, parking citations, and library accounts for fiscal year 2021. This is an annual process for council consideration and approval of the write-off of accounts deemed uncollectible. The city contracts with Merchants Credit Association, MCA, for collection services. MCA has determined that the accounts included all accounts except for the library accounts under $100 are uncollectible due to statute of limitations or bankruptcy. The library uses Unique as their primary collection agency and considers accounts with outstanding amounts under $100 account uncollectible for patrons who have not been responsive to Unique's collection attempts and have not used their library card in the past 2 years. Beginning in 2017, the library sends accounts with past due balances over $100 to MCA before writing them off. These accounts in the resolution this evening have been deemed uncollectible. The 2018 change to cash basis accounting by the city does not impact this process, and writing off the uncollectible balances will reduce revenues that haven't been recorded yet by $68,972.21. The city continues to maintain accounts receivable data, monitor delinquent accounts, and follow city policy for collection of those past due amounts. I want to pivot for a minute to mention the increase in past due utility accounts in the context of the end of the state moratorium for penalties and disconnects, which extended from March 23rd, 2020 through September 30 of this year. The city had an experience of an average of approximately 640 past due accounts each month in the year before COVID-19 and the moratorium, and averaged a monthly past due amount of around $99,000 in each month. As of October 31st, the city had 1,803 past due accounts, and a total past due amount of $901,885. The city is working with these customers to pay the balances with an expectation that these customers would pay their past due balances or enter into a payment plan within 60 days from the end of the moratorium. And the issue will be reviewed in detail with the Utility Advisory Committee at the meeting, I believe, which is scheduled later this week. And to close the loop with this agenda report, these moratorium-related past due amounts have spurred significant efforts within the city to work with customers to enter into payment arrangements or obtain payment before those 60 days is up. And it would take a number of years likely before any of those amounts would end up being captured in this annual process. And to address the resolution in front of you this evening, staff recommends considering adoption of the proposed resolution, writing off uncollectible delinquent accounts totaling $68,972.21.
Thank you, council.
Move we adopt the proposed resolution 2021-35, writing off uncollectible delinquent accounts.
Motion second to pass resolution 2021-35 for delinquent accounts, writing off delinquent accounts. Is there further discussion? Only to note in Keith's pivot, the 901,000, because we are now doing a cash system, we need to recognize that that has yet to be recognized in our financial system. Where historically that 900,000 would have made us look as if we were going to collect 100% of that. By moving to cash, we have not yet reflected that in any financial statement. Is that accurate, more or less?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, particularly annual financial reporting. Staff would continue to account for, report internally those balances as past due amounts, but wouldn't be reflecting it as.
Yeah, which is that's the I think the critical piece to recognize as we're looking at our quarterly financials. Thank you. So we do have a motion second to pass resolution 2021-35. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I too
I
vote
too
aye.
will vote aye.
Oh my God. He's back and he's pissed.
This is hand raised.
Yeah, well, he voted aye. It's too late. We passed the resolution. Thank you for joining us. We would note that Rich Elliott has now joined us virtually. So let's move then to 11A. This is council funded grant programs, council funded the recommendations for funding of programs.
So it's Heidi Barron, Sternaway, City Manager. I can give you a brief overview here. So council on an annual basis has several funds to distribute out to community organizations and programs in 4 different buckets. Our community grants, water quality grants, historic preservation grants, and our Parks Partnership. At a previous meeting, the Parks Partnership grants were approved. At this meeting, we present you with the other 3 groups. The community grants were reviewed by a council subcommittee, and the recommendation is attached to the staff report. The historic preservation grant recommendations and requests were reviewed by Landmarks and Designs recently, and their recommended funding is also attached in the water quality grant program reviewed by the Environmental Commission with their recommendation is attached. So staff recommendation is that you consider the awards and authorize the 2022 grant funding distributions in the amount of $41,234 for these programs.
Great. Thank you, council.
I move approval of the community grants as presented on the agenda.
Second.
We have motion second to approve the council funded grant program awards as presented in the agenda in the amount of $41,234. Is there further discussion? Only I would simply note for council to note the requests relative to the funding for each of those areas. We are currently funding this program out of utility tax, I believe. So, sales tax. Sorry. Anyway, but I think we need to recognize as we're moving forward that clearly the need that's coming in front of us is much greater than what we're allocating at this point for these types of programs. And it may be something as we move into the next year that council wants to have a broader discussion about. We do have a motion and second on, oh, I'm sorry.
If I might, so because it is tied as a percentage of sales tax for most of them, all of them except water quality. When we initially started this, it was at $10,000 and now it is 15. So I'm saying it grows.
I understand that. I'm
really
saying if I total 36,000, 57,000, 27,000, and 20,000, which are the asks, relative to what we just are going to approve for 41,000, you've got a nearly 2-to-1 ask.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing because
and that's why I want to, I'm not saying we need to close that today. I'm simply saying that it's a conversation for the council to have in the future. Because I think that the role the city plays as our revenues increase and our diversity increases, that it's a conversation that's reasonable for the city to have. That's all. Anyway, we do have a motion and second for approval of the grants as presented. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I too vote aye. That motion.
I vote
carries.
aye.
Thank you. A little slow there, bud. So
You didn't even make the motion. I want you to notice.
So let's move down then to 11B. This is an update from NOAANet on the broadband feasibility study. I think we have Chris Walker from NOAANet.
Good evening. Hopefully you can all see me. Chris Walker with NOAANet. I come from Spokane, Washington. I'm going to take a second here to share my screen. Let me know if you see it.
Yeah, we're good.
Great, thank you. As I mentioned, I'm Chris Walker. I'm the Director of Infrastructure Strategy here at NOAANet. I maintain a broadband development program here within NOAANet. As you're probably aware, we've been an open access broadband provider in the state of Washington for upwards of 20 years now. And we utilize our experience as a public benefit network to help facilitate the education process of other future or existing public benefit networks. And I've been working with your staff for a number of months now, specifically on this project, but actually for a number of years now, as we've participated in your broadband program, both as a engineering organization as well as a customer of your network. We are working on a broadband plan or a broadband development plan for your municipality. And this topic will be about the progress of that program. I would say from a chronological perspective, we are about 50% through the process. We expect this to take 6 months in total. And so the hope here is that we will be completed with this analysis by the beginning of next year, as well as have some recommendations for next steps as we continue to grow broadband in your community. As you'll see from my first slide, we have a number of objectives that we're looking to accomplish during the process of this 6-month evaluation. I think it's important to note one thing that we're not going to spend time on, and that is creating documentation around why broadband is so incredibly important. We believe that is a known concept and has been known by many municipalities and rural communities for many years now. And really what we're looking to do is to establish how drastic the problem is in your particular community and what potential solutions we would look to leverage in order to solve that. So as you can see from my screen, we do have 6 objectives, high-level objectives that we're going to look to accomplish during the course of this project. The 3 bottom objectives, as you see in italics, are further discussed in our presentation, so I won't necessarily touch on them to any long degree here, but I will quickly address the first 3 objectives. One, we have been working on a broadband development plan with the municipality now for a number of years, and we want to take what we've learned from that process and leverage it towards how we develop our future broadband plans. And I'll talk a little bit more to that in objective number 4 as I get further into this discussion. The second item we want to accomplish is mapping the broadband environment that the city has when it comes to broadband accessibility, affordability, reliability, and digital equity and literacy. And much like the COVID speaker from earlier, we look to utilize a survey tool to give us the data associated with that analysis. And in fact, part of this presentation, specifically objective number 5, will touch on some of the information that we've gleaned from your community as part of this process. Third, we have been engaged with both the county and their broadband development plans and Kittitas PUD in their broadband development plans as well. And so each of these 3 entities are looking to produce a potential public benefit network to solve this significant problem in our community. And we're spending a large amount of time working together to try and come up with a strategy towards a unified approach to solving the broadband problems in our entire county, knowing that there are differences within the county's broadband environment, the PUD's broadband environment, and of course, the municipalities. I will quickly say we do want to better understand what the city's role is when it comes to solving this problem. It is not new to us that the private sector is a broadband provider. And so we want to make sure that the city's role takes into consideration what the private sector is looking to accomplish and how we can take advantage of that or even potentially increase the benefit of that in our city's broadband landscape. The next slide really divides up the business case planning activities that we will be evaluating as one of our objectives. And there are 4 areas for consideration that we'll be spending a considerable amount of time on. And for the purposes of this discussion, let's focus on the top 2 to start. There are 2 mechanisms towards broadband development when you're a public benefit network. One is open access and the other is public-private partnerships. In our state, up until this past year, when House Bill 1336 was passed, municipalities, PUDs, counties predominantly had only wholesale authority. Now, that wasn't necessarily the rule with every municipality, but generally speaking, the majority of public benefit networks were limited to a wholesale model, which really put them into an open access position. So what is open access? Open access is a concept in which a public benefit network, usually owned and operated by a municipality or in our state a PUD or a county, provides an infrastructure system that enables the private sector to utilize in a non-discriminatory manner. And so the direct relationship between the network and the end user or the homeowner doesn't exist. The relationship actually exists between the service provider who utilizes that public benefit network for the benefit of providing services to the consumer. And that's an open access network. You can have a multitude of different providers on your physical infrastructure that utilize the services associated with the customer's needs. And those services vary. Of course, we all want internet, but the other services could be voice, the other services could be TV. And of course, now with the way technology is going, those services could also be Internet of Things, which brings up a whole nother conversation, and we'll defer that to later. The other business case that we'll evaluate is a public-private partnership. And like open access, it utilizes a service provider to deliver services to the homeowner. But what's different is a public-private partnership limits it to one private enterprise organization. And so rather than have a network that provides services to a bunch of RSPs or ISPs in the community, we would partner with just one entity for that service delivery. The upside is it reduces the complications of managing a number of service providers. The downside, of course, is that it reduces competition and options for the consumer when it comes to the services that they want to provide. The other 2 items below on the screen are really the exact opposites of each other. On the left, you see the excess capacity and business class service model. Traditionally, much like your network, networks are built, or fiber networks are built to support city services or PUD services or county services. And then because fiber has so much extra broadband bandwidth capacity, we can utilize that to provide other services where facilities and infrastructure exists. We do that because we coincidentally have infrastructure near schools. We coincidentally have infrastructure near a 911 center or a hospital, and we utilize that additional excess capacity to provide services. That is a fantastic model because the city intends to spend money on infrastructure for its own needs and then utilizes it for the greater good of the community. It also reduces risk by not having a full-blown citywide broadband network, which brings complications, but of course it brings rewards as well. Compared to the grand opposite of that, which is retail authority. Retail authority is the activity in which the public benefit network or the municipal network provides services directly to the end user. The end user may be a homeowner, the end user may be a business. Either way, the city really enters into a business, and that business is delivering broadband services to all of their constituents. Traditionally comes with a higher cost, comes with a higher management overhead, but also brings local control to the environment. And local control enables you to provide a superior service and overcome the hardships of a lack of broadband. So those four components we'll be analyzing and putting recommendations towards what a future project could look like when it comes to the business case associated with being in broadband. With that, we have a number of tasks. There are more tasks than just that are shown on the screen, but I thought it was important to show what our primary tasks are, and I have them broken down into three areas. And the tasks that we've been working on predominantly up until today have been really identifying the problem, right? And we want to really understand, where do we have community members that are not receiving the broadband services that they need? Are they unserved? Are they underserved? Are they served but potentially don't understand how to utilize the broadband to their benefit? Or potentially is the broadband too expensive or unreliable? Or what are the characteristics of your broadband landscape? And then with that data analysis, we want to identify areas that produce future build plans. So it's one thing to understand the problem, but if you don't understand how to solve the problem through an infrastructure build plan and the costs associated with that, you're not going to be able to make the decisions you need to make in order to improve the environment for your community. And we're going to be putting this all into an interactive map, which I'll be showing here in a second, and producing that in such a manner that it can be made available to the citizens of Ellensburg through the BeHeardEberg.com website. So with that, I'm going to quickly toggle into that interactive map so I can show you the product that your staff and my staff have been working on for so long as part of this project. And hopefully, if you would just respond real quick, do you see the city map on the screen now?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So data collection. Data collection is incredibly important, and we do that through a community survey. And our community survey captures data with the purposes of making intelligent decisions. And we did this through a web accessible portal, and we did this through customer surveys, and we collected a myriad of different data points. What's really fantastic about today's technology is you can utilize it to create maps, and these maps make it easier for people like myself and your staff to make informed decisions on how to go to market for an infrastructure build out. And as you'll see from the pop down window, as we're developing this map set, we're gathering an enormous amount of data that will help us make good decisions. One of the items that we're evaluating are the download speeds associated with the constituents in your city. And as you can see from the dots on the map, we've taken speed test results from your community and mapped those on the quality of broadband associated with their speed test when they did the map. And you'll see with the green dots, you've got a number of residential and business consumers who are utilizing broadband and getting fantastic coverage. There are a few great green dots, and that's probably a great user experience. Then there's a whole set of yellow dots, and that is your customer base or your citizen base that are experiencing speeds of 25 to 150. And then of course, the red dots where you're at 0 to 25. The current state broadband goal for download speeds is 150 megabits per second down to the consumer by the year of 2028. And so as you can see in our current environment, that the community is not receiving the broadband goals of 2028. And if I add the next layer of the map, which is the upload speeds, utilizing similar statistics, we also don't have the upload speeds associated with our 2028 broadband goals as well. So a lot of yellow dots in that 3 to 150 meg, some dots in the 150 plus, but a whole nother group of dots in that 0 to 3. So 0 to 3 on an upload speed is quite slow. And if you're working from home, or if your students are at home because of COVID trying to become educated, it becomes much more challenging to utilize that bandwidth to do their homework or to do their work when there's also other consumers of broadband in the household. In addition, we're taking all kinds of other information as part of our data to determine how many people work from home. And it's quite shocking how many home employees are working in city limits. There are as many green dots that say, yes, I work from home, as there are red dots. That's quite amazing. Then we also get statistics around people's satisfaction with broadband. So as you can see, there are a number of green dots where people are generally satisfied, but we also start to see the yellow and the red dots where people are dissatisfied. All this data is being collected and then being put into these heat maps so we can start making design decisions on how to prioritize an infrastructure plan if we were to build out this network. One thing I will quickly show you is the service zones that we're looking to design. And so there will be in our design, there will be 5 major design components with 20 plus mini components in each. And the reason I'm showing you this is because we're essentially dissecting the city into manageable chunks that enable us to have a production plan, if we were to build this, that mirrors need with costs. And so we can analyze the unserved and underserved capacity problem within your community with a production and construction plan associated with that particular build out. So this interactive map, as I mentioned a second ago, will be available on the BeHeardEberg.com once we're finished collecting the data, and accessible by yourselves, and of course accessible by the citizens of Ellensburg. Moving on, the shovel-ready design, as I kind of loosely mentioned during the interactive map, we'll be looking to develop shovel-ready designs in each of those different service zones. So a shovel-ready design, if you're new to that term, is a term utilized for grant applications in ready for construction. And so shovel-ready projects are what applications have developed in order to show that they're ready to be constructed. And so as we build these shovel-ready designs, hopefully we can mirror those up with grant opportunities that enable external funding beyond local funding to help support, whether it's state or federal. We will be shovel-ready to apply for those if there are those that an area qualifies for. And then lastly, the operating model, and I did discuss it a little bit earlier in the previous slide. We'll be looking to model out the open access broadband network. We'll model out the retail network. We'll model out public-private partnerships in an effort to find the most fiscally responsible business operating model for the city, based with the construction costs that we identified and based with the evaluations that we've done with the local private sector and the service providers, and how they want to participate, if they want to participate in a public benefit network. Slide number 5 is the path forward beyond just today's work. So I've talked about the building of the heat map, and we're getting near completion on that heat map. So now we're going to be looking to the future. As I mentioned, we'll do a build plan. We'll utilize the heat map to determine what our revenue expectations are. Obviously, if a zone has a high unserved component to it, the revenue expectations of that area would be higher than other areas. And so we'll look at that and analyze that. We'll look at the operating expense model of managing a larger scale network than what you currently manage, how that potentially would work with the county's network and the PUD's network as they look to evaluate the same thing, and then look to see what an organizational staffing structure would look like as you grow a network. As a comparison, NOAANET has nearly 4,000 miles of fiber in the state of Washington. And with that, we have 60 employees. And so as you can gather, the larger your network gets, the more employees that you need in order to operate and maintain it. And it also increases your reliability on external resources to help maintain that network. All these play into your go-no considerations on whether it makes the most sense for your citizens and your city to expand beyond what you currently do when it comes to broadband. And I am now to my last slide. I will say, as part of this project, your community is predominantly served by charter. Nearly 76% of the constituents are served by charter, now more known as Spectrum. And the remaining 25% is primarily consolidated. And there are a few other customers throughout with a number of different providers, but predominantly charter and consolidated are the two largest carriers. They make up most of the results of the surveys that you saw on the screen before you. And so you do have, active service providers in your marketplace today. What we need to understand is, will Ellensburg keep up with the state goals of 2028, as well as keep up with the demands of broadband as our consumers and our businesses demand more than they currently have? And with that said, I'll open up for questions.
Great, thank you. Council?
Is the survey still open?
No, the survey is closed. What we're currently doing now is taking that data and putting it into that interactive web page that you saw.
Okay, if you didn't say it, how many respondents total were there?
It was just under 1,000, which exceeded our goals by quite a lot. I think we were looking to get somewhere around 600.
So that would be, 1,000 would be statistically significant numbers.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
It also shows that people are interested and engaged. And one thing that you'll see from the interactive map when it's available and you start playing with it is the community believes that it's a utility. And that's an important distinction, because a utility is considered a service that is mission essential to people's lives.
Thank you.
The timelines for reporting, I'm assuming this looks familiar to those of us who have been here for a bit, but without some of probably the information and detail that you will provide. So what do we look in terms of having that come back? I'm assuming, I'm watching Nancy take copious notes, so I'm assuming that it hasn't been to UAC.
Well, UAC saw their plan to do this,
Right.
and
So again, the question, when you look at where you are with what needs to come back to council, what does that time frame look like?
Yeah, so there's going to be three things that we will be able to touch and feel when it comes to a deliverable. So the interactive map that I showed you a few minutes ago, we're within a week or two of having that completed. From a survey development perspective, we are now in process of creating those shovel-ready designs for the 20 service zones I also showed you. I would expect those to be completed within the next 2 weeks. And then once we know our capital outlay and the size of this potential network, we'll spend about 45 days putting together the operations and maintenance analysis of the different business models. And so I would suspect by early January, we will look to, one, having an interactive map that we can look at, and then two, looking at the report that shows what the staff recommendations are for a strategic plan on building out those service zones and the business model associated with that.
And the role that the city plays in that process.
That's exactly correct. Yes. And the role is the business plan. I'm using the term business plan, but that really is the role of the city when it comes to that infrastructure build out.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Where were you 4 or 5 months ago?
Me personally?
Oh, I don't, maybe that would be better than trying to respond. Nancy?
Yes, Chris, I'd like to ask, how do you, what kind of process do you use to identify areas of the city where there are low income populations? And is there anything in your process to address the affordability issues for those families?
Yeah, two tools. We look to the results of the question that asked that within the survey. And of course, that's going to be a segmentation of the overall population. Plus, we do a research with the school district for their school lunch programs and utilize that information to identify the volume of what would be essentially a low income subsidization plan. There's also a program called Lifeline, and now with the American Recovery Plan, there's an extended Lifeline program. So we'll look to accumulate that data and map that out as well. And so Lifeline is a mechanism in which your citizens can apply to their telephone company for a reduced broadband product, and they'll pay $9 a month for that.
Excellent, thank you.
Great, thank you. Other questions? I want to just recognize the work that's gone into this, not just from Noanette, but also from the staff to get us to this point. These are actually, I worked, Heidi and Ben and I and the IT staff met on the initial rollout of broadband grants that were coming through Commerce. We were not positioned well. We did not have this level of comprehension. This is such critical. I've got to tell you that like at 8:45, I wasn't excited. But as you went through the report, it's like, yeah, this is where we need to be. And this is the conversation we need to have. And this is going to be a data-based conversation that's incredibly exciting for this community ultimately. So I want to really recognize the work you're putting in to get this to us, and then the work IT staff has done to get us to this this juncture also. It's incredible. So thank you. I think we're good then. Thanks, Chris. Let's move on then to manager's report.
Excellent. Thank you. And I would just note with the previous item, the intent is as soon as possible to bring that to the UAC to do a deeper dive on the final recommendations. Then it would come to council. So January, February timeframe. So as far as the manager's report, waste management will do pickup on Thanksgiving Day. We made 2 gas purchases really to cover the winter for 2022, 2023. And then also we were awarded a housing action plan implementation grant through the the Washington State Department of Commerce for $75,000. I'm just recognizing that helps us advance some of our initiatives and looking deeper into our strategies for affordable housing. So being one of our council strategic priorities. And just to mention, I have a couple things going off script here a little bit. Appreciate Keith Bassett's delivery of the budget message today. And in there, you found a number of items that were connected to strategic priorities. What we will do is as we move into 2022, we were sort of 9 miles down a 10-mile road as far as budget did as far as the budget process when we did the retreat. And so we'll continue to bring forward actions and programs that help advance those priorities as we move into 2022. So you're not done. There's a lot more to come with that. Couple other mentions. We initiated a Reed Park Master Plan survey on Be Heard Ebert. So that is out there. We are looking to listen to the community. And so encourage folks to go to that, talk about what your interests are for Reed Park. There's no specific goal other than to listen to the community and what people want to see in the park. So appreciate you sharing that with folks. And then just thank you to the mayor for talking about the rotary stone installation to honor the military families. It's a really beautiful installation. And thank you to Sheriff Clay Myers who led that, and the Morning Rotary Club. Really great work and a wonderful tribute. So that's all for my report today.
Great. Let's move to council reports. Nancy, do you want to start?
Yes, I have no report tonight. All my meetings are this week.
Well, there's something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Tristan?
Yeah, my meetings were last week and I was on vacation, but I can report that the Ellensburg Arts Commission is revisiting their city arts policy. What I can recall most specifically is a suggestion that they could maybe revise language about what is allowable for further grants, specifically things that might allow or increase access for people with disabilities, because it's very specific thing. They cannot award anything that might be considered a capital project. There might be things that would allow access that aren't really, anyway, some proposals came up. They're revisiting that language, so that'll come before council at a certain point. I will ask to attend virtually at our first December meeting. And I'll also tonight announce my impending resignation for city council. I will stay on at least through the end of the year. I'm talking to staff. I will get an official date so that you all can interview and appoint as soon as possible. My family will be coming with me and we will be leaving the area late next spring. And so I'll leave council before that just to get all of our ducks in a row. But I got into med school, guys. Hey. So for all of your support. Yeah, so we'll be moving to Spokane and I will miss Ellensburg. And the plan is to come back and be a physician here. In a report.
I attended the Veterans Day Parade and the dedication of the stones with the Rotary Circle the City trail. Also on the city's website, you can comment on the reconnection of that Ballista Cascades trail. There's some designs there. Completing that section of trail from the event center to 14th or Dean Nicholson, and that hooks up and it's already completed all the way to Sanders. So that'll make it a really nice link when that's done next year, I believe. So it's in design phase now, and if you want to comment on the design, please too. I did attend an airport advisory committee meeting and a developmental disabilities. There's still vacancies on that board if anyone's interested. I also attended a couple of Washington Department of Ecology webinars on the Climate Commitment Act, and I still don't understand it.
And if you don't, the rest of us are cursed. I'm just saying. David.
I was downtown during the Veterans Day Parade also, and I dropped in briefly to Gordon Crane's retirement party in this very space. It's great to see. Nice cake too, who was responsible for that. Also, I mentioned this before, just as a FYI. Last week, the Kittitas County Planning Commission went through its docketed, his list of docketed comprehensive plan amendments or other amendments, and the proposed revision to the Kittitas County Airport Zone, which is the overlay zone, was accepted, recommended to be forwarded on to the commissioners for docketing. I mentioned this when we were going through the development code a while back, and our City of Ellensburg ordinance exactly mirrors the Kittitas County ordinance. The purpose of this is to not to significantly alter it, but to make some much needed corrections. So that once the county adopts its new ordinance, it would probably be appropriate for the city to follow suit. think Kirsten's aware of that. I've provided her with information. Draft, I wrote the draft amendments of changes. So I'm familiar.
Mary?
Lodging tax, city lodging tax had their meeting and did their scoring from all of the reports that we had all done and sent those forward to the county. The county meeting, county lodging tax meeting is this Friday. It's all day. I'm waiting to see what my schedule is going to be like, whether I can get there or not get there. They suddenly decided they want 3 from each municipality, which makes it a little more complicated for us. And I also want to remind people, the word on the street, or I should say on Noah, is that we're going to have snow this Thursday. And I realize that leaving your leaves in your yard is now the new thing to do. However, your leaves on the sidewalk are not friendly. They're slippery, they're slick, and they're really not nice under the snow. So if you could remember to rake up your leaves, and that does not mean putting them in the street, because they plug up our storm sewers, our storm drains. So could you just rake your leaves on your sidewalk, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Rich?
Yes, Planning Commission this week. Did miss the Parks Commission last week. I've been focused most of the last couple of weeks working on wildland policy issues, actually sort of on a broader scale, and that's actually where I am today, is working on wildland policy and climate change. And I have been working on behavioral and mental health issues and through the Kittitas County Health Network and through the Behavioral Health 0.1% group, but nothing really to speak of directly related to council. That's all I got.
Thank you. Rich, do you know, or perhaps Heidi, I lost track of whether the commissioners set their public hearing for the 1/10. They have not, have they?
I'm not aware of them setting it yet.
Rich, are you aware of that at all?
I'm aware that that is true. They have not actually set a date, but it is trending towards early December. And we are working on the presentation for the county commissioners, but it looks like they will likely docket that for early December.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just to wrap, I actually just prior to our meeting stopped in at the celebration for Donna Connor's life. It was at the 420 building. The Arts Commission actually acted to posthumously recognize Don as a city arts treasure. And if you've seen his work, I mean, it is just pretty remarkable. We did do a PTAC meeting. It was a special meeting. It was an orientation meeting. We've had a lot of turnover in that committee. So we were able to go over all the ridiculous acronyms that people end up using, but also give people some context and history of how we got to where we are with Central Transit. I think it was really well received. I think we've got one of the most interactive committees there that I've worked with really since we've started this. So it's pretty cool. We're continuing to move forward with TIP. We're looking to try and schedule our kickoff meeting, but looking now to the 1st of December. I'm expecting a call from Senator Murray's office. Raquel Crowley reached out. There's a memo. Anyway, the senator wants to touch base over our flood control measures, climate change impact. So we'll talk a little bit about some specifics, but also probably take a look at what we're doing collaboratively and what can end up supporting us broadly to deal with water issues that are coming through the city. Creative Business Benefit District is moving forward. We'll have an MOU, I believe, at our next council meeting.
We'll handle that administratively. Actually.
Oh, okay. So then, but the positive there is all the other MOUs from, I believe, 5 or 6 other nonprofits are in hand, which means basically the money once ours is done. And that the only hang up with ours has been adding our language in where EDA, the Downtown Association, is the lead. It's simpler for the other nonprofits to work with them than it is to incorporate our language into their MOUs. I also reached out and had a meeting with Jason White, who's the chair of the school board, over some of the issues that we've been discussing here on a regular and ongoing basis. I don't know that anything came out of that other than kind of a mutual awareness of our positions, what the district looks at, and probably some understanding at least of their approach. And then hopefully some understanding of the city's perspective. We'll see. With that, I don't have anything else for the good of the order. I think we could adjourn and be done. Thank you all. Thanks for attending. I can tell Adam's excited. Just